colors of the wind from Pocahontas. So if you could just take about 1 minute and quickly skim through the colors of the wind there and underline any examples of personification that you might find. It doesn't necessarily have to be what an English teacher would classify as personification, but just something where the lyrics kind of place a they place a human characteristic on something that's non-human. So just take about 1 minute and then be ready to share. Would anyone like to share any of the examples that they found? Colin?
Voices of the Mountain.
Voices of the Mountain, right? That's a great one. Anybody else? Yes, Grace?
Ask the grinning bobcat when you're grinning.
You're grinning bobcat, right? Bobcats don't really grin. We can personify them if they do. You have one, Sabrina?
The rainstorm and the river are my brothers.
That's my favorite one, right? The rainstorm and the river are my brothers. The heron and the otter are my friends. They kind of have this relationship with the animals, even though they're not human. Alright, so you guys can go ahead and flip to the second page of your packet. It's going to be a guided note, and you can take out a writing utensil and follow along. Alright, so the topic that we're going to be learning about today is the animism. So our writing target is going to be this. If I can just have 3 volunteers to read the right-hand section of the learning target after I read the question, that'd be great. Can I get 3 volunteers? Colin for the first one, Melanie for the second one, and Will for the third one. So what will I be able to do when I finish this lesson?
I can describe animism in Native American religions.
Thank you. And then what idea, topic, or subject is important for me to learn and understand so that I can do this?
I must learn and understand what animism is, make connections between animism and nature, and identify characterizing aspects of the Native American climate.
Thank you. And then what will I do to show that I can do this, and how well will I have to do it? Will?
I will show my learning by predicting a way in which an animist could think of a chosen feature in a given environment.
Great, thank you guys. And I know we're hearing the word animism a lot, but we're not exactly knowing what it is yet. But we're gonna predict and investigate. So first I just want you guys to look at this slide. Are these everyday objects? Or are they a little bit different? You guys notice anything about all of them? What do you guys notice? Amos?
They look like they have faces in them.
Yeah, they kind of have faces, right? You can see that they're kind of being personified. They have some human characteristics. Anybody else? So yeah, so basically in this slide, this is where our human eye is kind of trained to recognize faces in this stuff, even though they're not actually alive or actually real. And so this is actually a drawing by a 3-year-old that I babysit. And this is me. I don't know if you guys see the resemblance, but she's me. And so when babies are little, it's actually a scientific fact that they tend to draw the face first. So they kind of notice the eyes and the facial expressions and the emotions before everything else. So you'll notice like the arms and the legs, they're just sticks, right? They don't get a lot of attention. So it's just kind of innate, which means that like humans are born with it. It's an innate thing that humans kind of recognize facial features and inanimate things and then give them like human characteristics. Alright, so we're going to look at animism in 2 different spaces. I want you guys to pay attention to these videos, and then after these 2 videos, I want one person to volunteer and predict what they think animism might mean. So this is one from...
With MailChimp, you can design more engaging marketing assets in no time at all, thanks to our AI-powered...
You get the point. Right? The armor is moving around, the cups are moving around, the teapots are moving, and clearly they're not actually animated or alive. So that's one example in animation. And so then we're going to look at one from a Japanese anime. This is from 7 Deadly Sins, and it's a little pig. You'll also notice has some tips what animism might mean in your own words from these two videos? Paula?
Giving human qualities to non-human, either like animals or like a rock or a mountain or like a cup.
Yeah, I love that. I love how you included things other than animals. Alex,
The
did you think that?
the pig's name is Hawk.
The pig's name is Hawk.
That's
That's
great.
correct. It's kind of funny. The pig,
Yeah.
Hawk. Yeah. Alright, so guys, get ready to work on your guided notes. We're just going to go over this. So, what is animism? Animism is the belief that objects, places, and creatures all possess a distinct spiritual essence. It perceives all things, right? Just like Colin was saying, more than just so animals. Perceives all things, whether it's animals, plants, rocks, rivers, weather systems, human handiwork, and perhaps even words, as we see in some Native American cultures, as being animated and alive. And we also see the etymology of the word animism, and etymology kind of means like where that word came from. So the etymology of animism is that it's a Latin word, animal, and it means life and soul. So animal, we can also see that word in animated, animation, anime, it all has the same root word. Alright, and then the next thing that we're going to look at is animism in practice. So oftentimes, Native American beliefs will use rituals and ceremonies to celebrate and honor the animal totem. There is one little differentiation that I would like to make though between animism and totemism. So though they are kind of similar and they both represent animals and inanimate things or just non-human things with human characteristics, there is a difference. So animism is the belief that non-human things possess their own spiritual essence, while totemism is the belief that humans have a mystical relationship with something that's non-human as well. So totemism kind of seems foreign to Western culture. Like I don't think a lot of us would identify any of our beliefs as being totemist or part of totemism, but there is one super prominent example of totemism in Western culture. Would anyone like to take a shot at it? What it is? It's kind of difficult, but does anyone have an idea?
I'm thinking maybe like crystals, something like
Crystals?
that.
Okay, that's a good idea. Yeah, Joelle?
Flags?
Flags. Okay, you're pretty close, Joelle. So the kind of westernized version of totemism that we see is school mascots, right? So a lot of times schools take like non-human objects and they place their identity in them. They give them characteristics, they give them qualities, they give them this. So that's one kind of westernized version of totemism that you can think of together. But rarely is genuine worship of a supernatural being or totem ever actually found. So we see the totem poles, but they're never actually worshipped, they're just kind of like highly respected. Alright, and then lastly, animism in terms of beliefs. So as we know, there's a ton of different Native American tribes, and you can't create a universal religion or belief system that they all had because there's so many different ones. The only thing that we can kind of say, one common thread that runs through them all, is that nature is an integral role in spirituality, and geography often dictates traditions and cultures, right? So the environment around them does play a role in their beliefs, but they're all too different, and they have too many like differentiating types of geography to really have just one universal belief, but instead we just identify nature as being a common thread. And then lastly, as we know, Native American religious and spiritual practices are not super prominent in history. Most of the times that we see them in history, they are from oral history. And we'll look at it a little bit further, but oral history can often be a little bit biased, not as reliable as some other kind of source, but they can provide some different aspects of it, so we're just going to make sure we're looking at oral history and identifying bias in them. Alright, thank you guys for that. And so now we're going to go into some guided practice, I believe. Does anyone have any questions for yourself? We doing okay? Okay, cool. Alright, so we are going to go into some guided practice. So I'm just going to kind of divide you guys into little table groups like how you're already sitting. You can have group 2 down there, and then there's Dahlia and James will also work with group 2. You can have group 3 in this corner and then group 4. And then for our guided practice, I would like you guys to take the theory of animism, the theory of applying like characteristics to non-human objects of different creatures of myth and lore, right? So animism isn't only seen in Native American cultures, it's also seen in animation, anime, and as we talked about before. We're going to look at it in different kinds of creatures of myth and lore. So group 1, I would like you guys to take mermaids. Group 2, please do leprechauns. Group 3, you guys can do the Wendigo, and group 4, do the Yeti. If you guys need, just go ahead and use your laptops to like look up a little background research if you want a little like guidance on this. But yeah. So go ahead and help students to do that, and then please pick one speaker from your group to share with at the end of the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you guys are professor. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. It's pretty good.
You guys are going to be in group 2 as well. Is that okay? Yeah. Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, it's also like a human rig. I mean, yeah, it's a human plus like. Yeah, exactly. I would just say like one of the Animism just like others. Yeah. I was gonna say so.
You know what I'm talking about? Snow cone?
Like job work or like
Let's talk about
yeah. Yes.
If you're still delivering, that's totally fine. Take your time.
Did you get these?
So we had mermaids. And so we had a somewhat easier time finding some like human traits against this little bit like half mermaid. And so then of course you have to start to sort of mix that into the environment that it's supposed to be kind of. You got that fish bottom half, it's gotta be semi-aquatic. You also got that sort of, I don't know if this is a bad way to put it, like seductive upper half, because a lot of the time it's like a naked or half naked woman. These sailors who are seeing things in the ocean, they're like, what's that? It must be a lake.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
I love that. And I love how you guys incorporated the environment too. Great job. Group 2 for leprechauns.
Okay, so we said it was for like just a bare minimum. It's like just a more human-like fairy. Normally fairies are like small, more like I guess insect-like. The leprechaun is more human-like than that, and then also it focuses a lot, I guess, on the spiritual side of things because they're kind of a warning against greed. They're known for trickery and wishes and stuff like that.
Yeah, I really like how you kind of incorporated that greed and the wishes because that's some like human emotions rather than just like physical human characteristics. That's great, guys. Group 3.
So we had the Wendigo, and it's kind of creepy looking, but it's kind of like a deer that like stands on its 2 legs with like a humanoid body, kind of like a decaying, showing like human rib cage. And it's like a deer skull, but it looks like it's decaying. But yeah, like very humanoid body, human rib cage showing.
Yeah.
And I think it's in like the woods in like Canada, maybe something like that. So if you're looking at the environment, kind of like a cool
You're
or something.
totally correct. So the Wendigo was actually created by a Native American tribe with the theory of animism, and it was kind of like one of the human characteristic that it took on was the hunter-gatherer type thing. So the Wendigo was the hunter, but instead of hunting animals, it hunted humans. All right, and then the last group. What did you guys have to say about Yetis?
one that like offers Sully and Billy Crystal the snow cone. Sorry, Mike Wazowski did come in. But yeah, so we kind of like, in my personal opinion, I think it's like the personification of just the force of snow. But like my teammates said that it was Bigfoot plus snow, so I think that's a little bit more accurate. Like the Yeti and the Abominable Snowman are like both really similar.
They're similar, almost identical.
Yeah.
I love that differentiation that you guys did though. Alright, great job today. Still been the very last thing that we're going to do. Just go ahead and take a look at the third page in your packet. That third page is going to be your homework. So in that, I would like you guys to please just identify one key feature from the two pictures that you see above. Both of these pictures are actually from Van Cortlandt Park. And then you're just going to follow the questions and then just kind of write how someone who practices animism might have attributed a spirit to one of the things that you see in the picture. And so I'm going to be sending out evaluative criteria and an example in an email right after class. So yeah, and then just to wrap it up, can I have one person read what they may have written down for their one sentence summary on the guided practice?
Animism is the belief that all things have a spirit and often involves descriptive personification.
I love it. That's a great summary. Alright, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. Let me know if you need to log out. I think I like answered all of you to be logged out, but
What? What's it? Wait, what?
you know, sorry. Thank you.